Welcome to Marcos and James, the Lisbon Pirates podcast.
It's good to be back.
We are back after a long hiatus.
Yeah. Let me try to say the word hiatus.
Yeah. It's,
In
Portuguese. What is it in Portuguese?
Yeah, it's very similar. It's hiato.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I've never heard that word.
Hiatus.
I guess hiatus isn't a word we commonly use in English, so obviously I've never heard it in Portuguese.
But you could say, you could say in Portuguese, we have a hiato. Hiatus.
What would be a more common word to say if you were gone for a while?
Yeah. I'm thinking about it. But hiato, hiatus,
That's pretty common?
Yeah, it would be. It would be not probably the word you hear in people in the street, but
right.
Yeah, but it's the right word.
Apparently, I only talk with people on the street because I've never heard that word. But I learn something new every day. So, 10 years going, and I'm still learning Portuguese words.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And Mark, why were we away for more than half a year?
Right, yeah, it was half a year, wasn't it? So we were separated because of us being back in the States for 6 months, and so now we're back, and we've had many requests to start the podcast again. Yeah. I think at least 2.
Yeah.
So
it's plural.
So that means we have maybe 2 followers. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, and it was funny because we were together during this 6 months period. We were together in England and in the United States.
That's right.
And when we were together in the United States, we talked a little bit about our podcast, and some American people were interested.
That's right.
So
at one point, even we were speaking at a church, both of us, and they put up the podcast so that people could start listening to it. Yeah, it was great. And so I do want to say before we jump into the theme this morning. I do want to say one funny thing that happened while you were in America. Yeah. So maybe lots.
More than one.
But one of my favorites was Tiago and Ruth, his wife, were back in the States with us in Washington State, and I was so excited for you to try root beer for the first time.
Yeah.
And so I had a cold root beer, and not one of those ones in a can, one of the ones in a bottle. And so you tried it, and what did you think about it?
Oh, it's terrible. I don't. I want to be careful, but really, at least for me, and I'm not the only Portuguese with this opinion about root beer. Because first we hear the word beer and we really expect real beer.
Right, exactly.
And at least from what I drank at that time, it's
fake
not.
Beer.
Yeah, it's fake beer. Yeah, it's fake beer. You could hear that from Donald Trump. It's fake beer.
Fake.
and then there was this other supplemental fact. Fact. Can you say that?
Sure. Additional fact.
Yeah, additional fact that I tried that root beer. With ice cream, and everybody was cheering that, and I really felt
root beer
that.
Float.
It was terrible. It was terrible, and everybody was hoping for me to enjoy the thing. But mixing the drink with the ice cream, it ruined both things.
And you said it tasted like cough medicine.
Yeah.
Right? So
it was a surprise for me.
And that's like my favorite drink of all time. So.
It's great because when you visit a country and how much I love the United States, but at the same time when you're trying something that people are so excited about and for you, even if you try to go there and enjoy, but sometimes you have to be just honest and say this doesn't make sense.
That's right. I would say our first couple of years here in Portugal, I was very scared to say that. About some dishes. Oh no, I love everything. Everything's wonderful.
No,
but after a couple of years, I gained the courage and I was able to say, no, I don't like this one. Very few things, but.
And I think it takes real love for a place or a people that you can be honest and say, this is not good.
Yeah.
And you know that because one of the great things of having you, Mark, as a pastor here at Church, Igreja da Lapa, it's that you can be honest and just say stuff about us that it's not good, it's not okay. And for us, even listening to that, I think it's liberating because, we are not perfect. So we should have people saying difficult but honest things about
Well,
us.
hopefully it's always done in love.
Yeah.
If it's not, feel free to smack me.
I probably wasn't that loving when I expressed my opinion
about root beer.
Root beer and the ice cream.
The ice cream.
Because you said it has a name.
Root beer float.
Root float.
Yeah, a root beer float.
Because there's something.
I guess maybe because the ice cream is floating in the root beer.
Sounds
even worse.
Good.
Oh, funny. Well, this morning we do want to tackle a subject, and I think it's one of the things I love about our conversations on this podcast is that we talk about things that are happening at our church, Igreja de Lapa. And so these are current things. And so one of the things that we started this year, in fact, last Saturday was our very first meeting, was a men's group. Yeah. And so, Tiago, talk to me a little bit about kind of what our desire for this men's group, and then just talk generally about, like, what did we see as the need as far as starting a men's group in our church, and what are the objectives for this men's group?
First of all, I think it's useful to say that, and of course I'm making a big simplification saying this, but I think it's helpful to say that in a Portuguese setting, and probably in some European, in a European context, it's not that usual for you to have men's groups.
Okay.
So, and in some ways, it can be perceived as a thing from the past, even a chauvinistic thing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, if you think about evangelical churches in a place like Portugal, in the past you'd have a strong women's groups, and some trying to have or to do some similar thing with the men, but it never worked.
Right.
So, and I'm going to make a link with something that I really believe it's a weak thing from our Portuguese culture, is that we tend, I think in a Portuguese setting, we go really fast to opposites. Okay. So in a way you have the Latin macho thing. Yeah. We are not that expressive like the Italians, for instance, but you have a macho Latino thing in a Portuguese setting also. And this is one of the opposites. But then you get really fast to passivity and to male passivity.
Male passivity, right.
So generally, and when I say this, in a way, I'm acknowledging my own sins. Right. It's really easy for Portuguese parents, for Portuguese dads, fathers, to or be very territorial and do their macho thing, the man of the house, but then at the same time going to passivity. When you start something like a men's group in Portugal, it's very different from having that in America. I would say that in America it's a much more natural thing to have. And I don't know, be fair, but be honest, because you're an American here, and don't you feel something like this from your own experience? Yeah,
and I would say, I think the way you set up those two extremes, I think probably you could find them in every culture, the extreme machoism or extreme passivity. And so, I mean, I would even say that in American culture, you do find those extremes as well. And so maybe not on the same level or in the same way, but I think that's the goal as well, even from my background as well, seeing men's groups form, is that they can be very helpful to kind of combat those two extremes. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. Could you describe a little bit kind of what the purpose would be of having a men's group?
In a way, because I really believe that when we are dealing with when we do believe, like we do here, that there are certain, that men and women, they have the same, how would you say, in God's eyes, they have the same, they are equal in terms
equal,
of
made
their
in God's
dignity.
image. Right.
They are imago Dei. They were. Man has God's image, and women has God's image. So, but at the same time, when you believe, like we do here, that God calls for certain things from men and God calls from different things from women, and we are not saying that they are mutually exclusive. Exclusive. So my English is poor.
Well, we need to do more podcasts.
Yes, we do. But so when we believe in something like that, and when we are in Portugal, I think you'd have to be blind not to acknowledge that we have a cultural problem in Portugal.
Right.
And in this sense, I would just one more time make a distinction about the American background, because America is a big country, very different in lots of ways, but it's a country that was in some way it was built by by the strength of people that were coming there already there. So there's a place for you you have to know how to handle your life's business in a different way in Portugal. That's not that common. So to get here, when we try to preach the gospel and apply the gospel to our lives, I would say that a big issue in Portugal is for men to acknowledge their masculinity coming out from the Bible, not from a machoism culture, but from the Bible. And I really believe that we have a big problem in Portugal, because in lots of ways, spiritually speaking, men are passive, and this is a big problem in our church, because generally women's groups they are faster getting things done, going and reading and studying the Bible. This has been happening in our church for probably 4 or 5 years, and men were still
we're light years behind, aren't we?
And so this was something that we really believe we have to start doing something.
So really what we're talking about is biblical manhood. How to be a man, how to be a husband, how to be a father, how to be a great member of a church, a member of society, a Christian who thinks theologically but then acts practically, or Christianly in that sense. So really helping men be what God intended them to be, knowing that there are distinct differences, even though, yes, as you said, we're created in God's image and we're all the same in that sense, but we have different roles, distinct roles. And these roles, I think what you've described, and this is happening so fast in America as well, is that those roles are becoming, the lines are becoming blurred. And so we no longer really even know what are men supposed to be? What are men supposed to do? How are they supposed to react? How are they supposed to care for their families? And how does the Bible help us understand that? And so that's kind of a little bit what we're trying to do here and tackle this. And we're going to tackle it in a couple of different ways. So on Saturday, I think it's worth saying, because this is, I think when we say a men's group, people think, okay, you guys showed up at the church and got in a little circle and talked about each other's feelings. What did we do? We didn't do that, did we?
No, we didn't. We went to Monsanto. How would you describe Monsanto? It's a forest.
Oh, it's incredible. It's like, I think it's one of the largest natural forests within. Well, it's definitely within Portugal, right, or within the city of Lisbon. But
it's funny because
in the city, I would say, not outside.
It wasn't. It was man planned. So.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, decades ago. It's 20th century.
Okay. So fairly recent.
But it's really at generally we call it the pulmão of the cidade.
The lung of
Lisbon.
Interesting.
And so we went there. We were 20. We were 20. It was a good group, and we walked a little bit. How would you say you hiked?
We took a little hike. Hiked a little bit. Yeah.
And then you shared the word with us, and it was a brief thing, but of a very, I would say, a very pointed.
Pointed.
It
was very pointed.
Yes. And why? Explain.
I don't want to. Yeah. Well, I guess it's not a spoiler because it already happened, but yeah. So we just talked about Proverbs 27:17, and I'll let our listeners look that verse up if you don't know what that means, but essentially it's that famous verse of iron sharpening iron, and so. As an example, I have a knife that's very sharp and very can be very useful, and so I use that kind of to show the difference between.
And there's the debate around: is Mark's knife legal in Portugal? And most of people, they think it's not legal because we have some strict laws about knives and everything weapon. We have strict laws in Portugal.
That is a funny cultural difference.
Yeah.
Here everything is, it's nothing's legal.
Yeah.
And in the States, almost too much is legal.
Yeah.
So there's extremes on both ends.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's not legal.
Which only makes things more exciting.
So it was a great start. And then one of the objectives, one of the things that we're going to try to do is on a weekly basis. Every once in a while, we're going to get out of the church and go do a hike or go do something incredible. I've thought about doing paintball.
Yeah, that would be
great. That would be incredible.
Yeah.
But then weekly, we're going to kind of try to support men by doing kind of some discipleship training, discipleship time with them every Wednesday at the church. And what's the other idea? Because I think this is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, and the other idea is gathering a group of men every Wednesday here, and it's not easy because it's during the week and men are working, but because we are at the center of Lisbon, there are some men who can get during lunchtime here.
Sure,
because in Portugal we tend to have big lunchtime periods, at least. I guess that in America you wouldn't waste so much time.
Usually. I guess that if you were the boss, maybe you could take a lunch hour like that.
Yeah. And so we are trying to every Wednesday during 12 and 14, or would you say?
Like to 2 o'clock, like between 12 and 2.
Yeah. So that we can be together and you, Mark, be sharing something with us from the Word and just praying for each other. And let me just add a thing, because I think this is one of the it's an additional challenge for us as Portuguese. In some ways, and of course I'm making a caricature, but in some ways in Portugal you tend to see faith as women's subject. If you go to the church, and of course, and I want to be fair with my Catholic friends, but it has a lot to do with Catholicism.
Right.
So because men of religion, they are priests, but then when you think about lay people, majority of lay people inside church, generally they are women.
Right. And generally people probably have that perception that it's kind of a religion for women, or that's what the women go do.
So even when you're an evangelical or a Protestant in Portugal, that's something that's still stuck to you. So we even in evangelical churches, we at Lapa, I'm always trying to and go after men. When you open a prayer time, generally it will be women picking praying, and I'm not saying, of course, there's no rule in the Bible saying that when you open a prayer time, men should lead. At least I don't think there's something like that explicitly written in the Bible. But that says a lot from this contextual problem that we have in Portugal. And so even when you're with a couple, a Christian couple. Unfortunately, I would say that men will think that, okay, it's more natural for my wife to talk about God than
for the man,
and this doesn't make sense. And of course, we don't have to bring a dichotomy around here, but we have a problem when men are really slow to engage the Word, talk about faith, engage each other, and that was a powerful thing about the word that you brought last Saturday when you talked about that verse in Proverbs.
And so really what we're saying is we want men to be men. We want men to be men that follow Jesus, that are leaders in their homes, leaders in their families, leaders in the church, in their workplaces, for the sake of the gospel and for the glory of God. And so that's going to be our challenge that we're going to be working on this year. And so I think during the podcast this year, we're going to talk maybe a lot about biblical manhood, and maybe in a sense, maybe even sometimes biblical womanhood as well.
Of course.
But that's going to be our challenge. So, if you're a man, not only in our church, but and you're hearing this, we would like to challenge you as well to say, come and find out what it is to be a disciple of Jesus, to follow after Jesus as a man. And of course the Bible says a lot about that. And so this is going to be an exciting year for us. And our hope and desire is that men grow in their faith, grow in their responsibilities, in their homes and in the church and in their cities. And I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm very hopeful about that also. And so please come at these meetings every Sunday. We'll be, remember us, but we'll be restarting. It doesn't. Can I say restart?
Oh yeah. Oh, restarting what?
Our
Where are you going with this?
our English.
Oh yes, yeah.
Service.
So we're going to be restarting our English worship service. We took a hiatus as well from that as well. But yeah, so we're going to be starting that back up in March, and so be attentive to details that are going to come out pretty soon, and we'll do some publicity for that, and it'll be great to get back into that as well. So
it's good to be back. So.
Yeah.